on a blank page, so rather than starting off with a completely blank sheet and having to define everything from scratch, then you do have a starting point. You have maps pre-built, which we'll see momentarily, and from there you can start to develop your own, especially if your versions of PRODML are slightly different from the standard. And again, if your PPDM 3.8 is slightly different from the standard, then you can also modify the mappings in terms of where that data is getting stored on the target side. As Carl was saying, we'll also be documenting any of the key issues that we have when we're creating these maps so people use them, have the documentation alongside it to describe exactly what's happening. The areas of PPDM we'll be covering, in the business module side of things, there will be facilities and production entities, and we'll also be requiring some support modules in terms of products, reference tables, and PPDM units of measure. The key movement we'll be looking at today is the kind of facility flow through the product period, with flow rate, pressure, and temperature that we'll be moving through. And what we'll do is we'll have a quick look at one of the sample files that's provided by Energistics in PRODML, and we'll see that sample file and how we're going to move that through PPDM 3.8. So just to explain it in a little bit more detail, initially we're going to look at moving the facility over to the production entity, and also the facility parent will be moved to the, again to a production entity via the production entity cross-reference table, and we'll also be creating production entity facilities for each facility as we go along. We'll also be looking at moving the facilities across directly to the facilities within PPDM, for example. For the database that I'm using, I don't have any facilities currently in there, so we'll be populating that as well as we go along. And we'll also, for the actual data that we're moving, so the actual flow rate, as you can see, we'll be following down the PRODML through the flow, through the product, to the period and the flow rate value, and we'll be moving that into the production entity flow measurements and also looking at and setting the product. So what we've done in the past, we have shown this to a few people before, and we were pointed in the direction of Norway as a potential place where PRODML is being used and there's active investigation going on in terms of how to get the most out of the PRODML that they're doing. And one of the key things we saw there was an association, EPIM, which is Exploration and Production Information Management Association. And what they do is they're all about data flow between the licensees and the governing bodies. So they provide things such as DPRML and MPRML, which are daily and monthly production volume reporting. So they provide standards to allow that data flow between the two parties to be as precise and accurate as it can be. So what they've done is they've taken PRODML and defined, again, their own slightly different version of it in terms of this DPRML and MPRML. What we've also seen is the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate, and they store all the information, so all the common, and I might be explaining things that are obvious to some people here, but for those that don't, then they have fact pages, which is the information about things that are going on the Norwegian continental shelf, and they provide it as web-based data. They also provide that as Excel and CSV, and that data is also used in some open source projects. So there's a lot of information out there that's available, and towards the end of this demonstration, we'll have a quick look at the kind of Norwegian side of things and how they've done it and how that looks in TM also. So let's continue to the demonstration. So this is the view of Transformation Manager, and if we have a quick look round, we can see on the left-hand side we have some projects. Below that we have some models that we've loaded in, and below that we have some procedures that we can use. So if we have a look at the projects, so the one we're looking at today is production volumes. You can see we've also had a look at production flow model and also the fluid samples. The main one we're focused on is production volumes for now. As I start to expand that out, we can see we have the models, transforms, and any error handling projects that we have. So if we expand, we can see the models there. So we can see we have prod volumes, the XML that's loaded in, or the XSD. And we can see we've got PPDM 3.8 database model as our target. If I expand the transforms, so we can start to see we have created a number of transforms to start migrating this data over. So I just double click on the first one, we can have a look at it. So this is the top level one, and within TM what we have is this idea of cascade, so everything's structured from the top level down. So what you'll find is that although we're starting here, and everything, the same as in XML, to where everything's related, TM will follow those structures down. Sometimes it'll be taken from one XML node and putting it into a number of different PPDM target tables, or it may be a number of different PRODML elements going into one PPDM table. But you'll see as it flows down that we'll follow those structures and move the data appropriately. So you can see on this left-hand side of the center pane we have the source model, and the center pane we have some mapping definition, and on the right-hand side we have our target model, so the PPDM 3.8 model that we're going to. So if we start to have a look at the actual mappings that are showing here, then what we can see is we're populating the PDM ID, PPDM GUID, the PDM type, and PDM name. So all fairly straightforward. In this case, I've simplified a few bits out even further just to make it clearer to view, especially when you're viewing the data afterwards to see how things are connected together. So you can see that's purely taking facility information and it's populating and creating production entities. Just a word on the models, as we can see here, if I just make that a little bit bigger, we can see we've got icons next to the attributes within the tables. So the little green dots indicate foreign keys, the orange dots indicate primary keys, and whether it's hollow or filled in indicates whether it's a mandatory value or not. Again, it's a similar kind of thing on the source side. It's slightly different in some ways. All the little arrows are relationships. Again, we have these on the database side that's a little bit further down because of the size of the tables. So within the XML, you can see that the facilities got some related parents. So facility parent 1, facility parent 2. And again, if we look on the production entity, then we can see we have similar set of we have far more relationships there. This production entity is related to a number of different things. So the first thing we were going to look at was creating the production entity facility. And here, what we can see, just to show you, is this line here that we're looking at. And this is just taking the relationships, it's relating things between the facility and the production entity. So on the facility side, on the source, we're using, within TM, what we have is a self relationship, which we can see there. And this is something that we can add within TM very simply by adding a new self relationship, just clicking that button adds that self relationship for us. It means we stay in the same table on the source, and we'll go down to the production entity facility on the target. So I can navigate to the cascade. You can see now on production entity facility. And we're not setting too much there. Most of it's set by the foreign keys as we're going through. You can see the little green icons will all get set automatically by TM because the primary keys are already defined for us in the transform above it. But we do cascade down again, and we cascade down to facility. So we're still holding on our facility on the source, but now we're creating our third target, in this case, so facility. And you can see we start to set up some information here, some simple mapping. And for the simple mapping, again, it is just to show you, it's the kind of drag and drop to put the mapping lines in. In this case, also from the conditional logic and things we can see here, control space in terms of the IDE allows us to pop up our context-sensitive help, so you can add in the if condition there. And you can also see that we have a number of inbuilt functions indicated by the icon on the left there, that allow us to do various things, all the things from the basic string manipulation right through to kind of batching through in databases, so you can batch things up so you can move them in blocks of 1,000 or 10,000, and when it's doing that kind of batching operation, it will also take into account the constraints, so it's not going to start inserting stuff that will violate constraints, so it will insert into the database in the correct order, and always make sure it's put in a full set. So, as we can see here, looking at that going to see if the source has a facility parent, if it exists. And if it does, then we'll go down and we'll actually set the extract table as we're going through. And if I navigate through that again, we can see we get to a facility, another facility on for the parent. So here we're on facility parent 1 now on the source side, and we're populating the facility on the target. And that pretty much takes us to the end of that kind of stream of things, if you like. So we've gone as far down there as we need to go. So we've created the facility cross-reference table, and the parent facility. And we do a similar thing there, you can see facility parent 2. So once we've done those, if we navigate back up to our stat map, then here we can see there's our initial cascade that we did. If we go down, we can see we're setting a few other bits and pieces there. But we're also going to set our prediction entity cross-ref table. And here we can see the logic to do that. So again, we've got if conditions for the facility parent. We can navigate down to it. We can see now we're still on the facility. We're taking the cross-reference table for the prediction entity. And we'll cascade down again. Again, a lot of these foreign keys are all set automatically by TM as you're going through. You can see we're setting a couple of things, PPDM GUID and the XF office number. So as we cascade down again, you can see now we've gone to facility parent on the source, production entity again on the target. And we'll set up our facility parent 1. So if we go back up to the top again, so we can see we've done the facility parent 1 now, production entity cross-reference table. We'll do exactly the same for facility parent 2. We then iterate through over the flow, over the product, over the period. We finally get down to the flow measurements. And we start to set some of the flow measurement information. You can see here we're setting the temperature, pressure. If I navigate down, we can see that we're also setting the flow rate down here. So again, it's very easily structured. It's quite concise in terms of how we're moving objects on the source to objects on the target. You can see how in some cases we're staying on the same object on the source, and sometimes we're going down a number of different objects on the target and populating them. So once we've done all that, once we've created our mappings, what we can then do is we can actually build the transform. And what this is doing in the background, it's going to create as a Java jar file that we can use for our runtime. So you can see we've got some warnings there, but we'll let it set down for the demonstration. And we'll launch our migrator. And in migrator, you can see here we've defined the source, which is just our production volume XML file. And we've defined our target database. And we'll click run. And this will actually run that Java jar. It'll, as you can see here now, it's writing some elements into the various tables. And if we want now, we can come back and we can have a look at exactly what we've populated from that run. So if we go down to the PDM tables, then we might want to have a look at the PDM facility. There we can see the facilities that we've inserted. And again, it's just like a sample file that comes in. So there's the product volume file that we're bringing in. You can see we have facility compressor A. So somewhere in that list, we'll have a compressor. So there we go. We can see that coming in there. So you can see the information that we're loading in. We can have a look at the measurements. So we can see some of the measurement data that's coming in. And again, if we wanted to, we could actually look and we can navigate between the various things. So from our production entity facility, we could have a look at the facility that's related to that by navigating our relationships. And there we can see, so this is our line in our facility table, defining that facility that we've created. So you can also navigate around your data, around your relationships, and actually see what you've populated and how you've created that information. You can also do it on the source side exactly the same. We can connect up to the data there. We can have a look at that. and see how that data is all structured even before we move it. And again, if you've already got data in the target before you carry out your mapping, you can look at that prior to the movement. One other thing, just tool related, I guess, is the fact that all the information that you get from PPDM create comes in with the comments, so we can right click, we can view the comments, so we can see that information about, in this case, the flow measurement. We can right click, we can see against casing pressure, so we can start to see the information that's given to us. And again, we can do exactly the same on the source side. So all that information that's put in these models by PPDM and by Energistics is available to us. We can view that, so all that information there is not lost when you're bringing those models into the tool. And finally, what we said was we're going to have a look at the Norwegian side of things. So in this case, if I have a look at the PRODML, which we loaded in, so I'll open a new project up that we've got. Again, here you can see there's the project for the PRODML. We can have a look at it. It is pretty much identical to the PRODML version. The owners that have changed is the final part, which is where we're actually writing to. So where we're writing to flow measurements, and now we're writing to the volume summary. But on this first map here, just draw your attention, the first thing I'm actually doing is looking at validating the MPD area. And what this is, it's a lookup, and what I did in another project was I had a load MPD, and very simplistically, all I did was take some of the information that the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate were providing in the CSV file. So they're providing information on fields, so I just took the CSV file, all the fields. I quite simply, for my case, populated a simple database that held the areas. So you can see I brought that CSV file in with a transform, and I can say that is just straight one-to-one mapping the target database that I created for that. So I have another database that I connect to and actually have a look and check up the field, so I can actually validate that MPD area. So I can check that the MPD area is correct before actually writing this information across. So I'm actually looking up against this standard data that the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate provides to make sure that the facilities that are coming in adhere to their MPD standards. And if we just have a quick look, we can see the production volume here coming in. We can see the naming system's MPD, so we know that we should be looking up against their fact pages. And what we can do is we're actually checking to see that that is correct prior to actually importing that data into our database. So by simply having that first line here, there's this condition, and validating that, and all the validate area is a lookup. So we can edit that lookup. There you can see it. And it's quite simply going off, and you can see there's a few steps to look at the lookup, to say which table you're going to connect to, which database, and the actual conditions that you're going to check. So in this case, I'm passing in the installation content to check that the installation is within our MPD fact page data that we're getting. If it is, then it will write it. If it's not, then we won't, and we'll write out some logging. So just to show you, I created another one. Well, I copied the same thing, purely added CG onto the end of it, just to invalidate the name, if you like. So what I'm going to do is we'll build this, and I'll run this twice. So I'll run it once with the correct file, and once with the invalid file, and we'll see what we get. So again, we can launch the migrator. If we have a look at that, so there's the platform, the normal one. So we can click run. We can see it's run. We can see the elements written. So you can see it's quite a small file. Not much has been moved across, but information has been moved across. The reason I picked platform was just because it did have some facility parents to migrate, so I could see that it was following that same structure as the example we used between PRODML and PPDM 3.8. So you can see that's run, that's written elements. So if I browse and change that to the file that I have altered and click run, and now you can see it's run, but it's only elements read, so there's nothing actually been written. So, and that's because as we said, that first line that it was doing, it was checking against our MPD data that we've taken from the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate and put into our database. So it checked against that, it says that's not a valid name, and therefore it hasn't populated our target database. What we also said was we were going to write out some logging, and behind the scenes what PM uses is log4j. So we set up the login, and that quite simply logs out facility SRTG not found in the MPD database. And all that is down the bottom of the map. You can see we have the log info, facility, we get the name of the facility from our source, and then not found in MPD database, and then the file we're writing out to. And the only addition to that is we just set up our login config directory to point at our log4j practice file. And that's it. That's all you need to do to get that output to come out, in this case, our text file. There at the bottom, we can see we're writing to the volume summary. If we navigate down to that, we can have a quick look. Again, it's very similar to what we were doing before for the flow measurements, but this time we're going to PPDM vol summary. And again, finally down there, you can see that we're populating some information. And this kind of thing here, we've got a case statement, so depending on the production time, we're actually going to populate either the oil volume, the gas, or the water. So because what we're getting in, if we go back to the source, we've got a platform, so you can see here we're getting oil, we're also getting gas, and the water. So depending on those, because production volume summary stores all three, then we'll actually write out to the correct attributes on that target, depending on what that production time coming in is. And that pretty much is it. So I'll just swap back to the slides, as I'm conscious of the time. So in summary, what we're looking to provide is an out-of-the-box template transform that we can customize to fit the customer's use. So, you can use your own version of PRODML, as we can see the Norwegians using the PRODML. The transforms are nigh on identical, and it's just a case of then customizing it to the particular attributes within the source elements and target tables that you're using. So if you've got your own version of PPDM, etc. And it's implemented using TM, so it's a fairly standard way of implementing it. It gives you a clean, abstract view of your mappings, and it allows you the ease of actually updating and manipulating in the future. So to change your model and update your source and target models within TM is roughly about 3 clicks to do that. So it's very quick and easy to swap models, update models, get new tables and attributes in, whether they be source or target based. And that's one of the key elements when you're going forward, is having something that's maintainable and has some longevity to it when you're looking at putting in your data governance plans within your various companies. Well, thank you very much for listening today. That completes my section of the demonstration. I'll hand you back to Carl Glenn for closing comments.
Thanks very much, Chris. We've got some questions. First one was, what's the plans for the future mappings, or extending this, I guess?
Okay. The future mappings, at the moment we're covering production volumes, and we're kind of looking slightly ahead of some of the working groups that are evolving. So, for instance, we also do templates for WITSML to PPDM, and that follows, and we actually work in a working group for that are developing that mapping with key experts to define how the WITSML should be populated in PPDM. With PRODML, it's slightly different, as it's something they're looking at doing, and it's certainly something we'll be looking at following and being involved in. But we're also trying to start off and already create these templates, and we'll also provide any information that we gather as part of this exercise back to the Energistics PPDM groups for them, if it'll help them when they do actually start the working group, which seems to be something they are looking at doing in the near future.
Okay. Another question is, could you use the mappings to map to something that wasn't PPDM?
You can map them to other things. So again, it depends. The mappings themselves, If it's something similar to PPDM, then yes. If it's something different to PPDM, then it's not quite so straightforward. It depends how much restructuring you have to do. I mean, if your target model is completely different from PPDM, then it's just a case of questioning whether the restructuring effort required is more than the effort of recreating with TM, because it's a fairly straightforward exercise to create them. But certainly, if it's a version or a blend of PPDM that you're using, then that's no problem at all. It's quick and easy to swap in the new models, bring in your, which have your tables, your attributes, and everything else that you've modified in there. And even if you put back some of the constraints, whatever you guys have done within your own models, then that's fine, and you can load them and swap that over with the existing one, and you can just modify the bits. And usually it's a case of adding the bits to move data to the new attributes and new tables that people have added.
And obviously, using a tool like Transformation Manager, you can, in theory, map PRODML to virtually anything, and then create the component to move the data. Okay. So another question was how to configure the source, e.g. the product volume.xsd into the TM designer.
How you get the product volume XSD into the designer? It's, again, a very simple task. I mean, I could show you, I guess, if that's...
Yeah, I mean, if everybody's okay, please, by all means, just stick with us. We're running slightly over, so for those that can stick around, please do. But obviously, don't feel pressured if you've got other things to get done as well.
I'd say this is quick and simple within TM. So as I kind of passed on earlier, there are models here that I've loaded in. There are various databases and SSDs. So if I'm loading a model, if I'm loading a database, for instance, I mean, I can click on there. You give the user password URL, connect up and load that in. For the XML, so again you can see, we select the file. So in this case, we go down to PRODML, schema, down to the XSD schemas. Go down to the object, somewhere down here. So here you can see the object. So as you're saying, initially we're covering production volume, which is this one here. So we're selecting that XSD, and for those of you who haven't seen, these XSDs then include a lot of other XSDs within them. So it's a case of, it'll also include a number of these PDF files and various bits that it needs to complete the full model. So this production volume object will include a number of others. So all I do is select the top level, which is production volume in my case. Simply hit next. I'll specify the name to make sure I'm not clashing with anything else. So I'll just call it CG demo for now. I'll hit next. You can see there's a bit of configuration we can do if we want to with XML. Hit next. And then what we get is select the root element. So for this case, product volumes. Hit next again. So now what this is going to do is load that model into Transformation Manager, and you can see it's in it. There's the model as one of our list of models. So you can see the green indicates our root, which is production volume. Below that's the production volume, and that's in. It's available to use. If I want to now, I can actually swap that out, so I won't completely vandalize my my demo at the moment. But as you can see, to change that source model, there's CG demo. I can hit next. There's only 2 more steps to go through, and that will swap my model over, and that model will be in and usable as my new source. And that's it. That's all there is to it to get that XSD in. As some of you may have seen, the kind of standards that we load in a database is flat files in terms of structured flat files, CSVs. Generic covers a whole range of different things that we extend out to. Excel, kind of, I guess, is included in that. But also Java objects we do, and XML. And we also define model packs for various things. So we provide model packs of preloaded models, including PPDM 3.8 and 3.7 as a model pack. So they're all available as well as model types directly without you even having to connect to your database and load it in, which can save if you have to go through your database admin guys to actually just load in the database model or to get access to the database, to load in the metadata.
There are a couple of other questions. We'll go through another two, and then for those that the questions that we weren't able to answer today, we will get back to you and give you an answer. But another question was, can the mapping be scheduled in TM Designer so that the XML files can be read on specified period?
Hold on, repeat that question.
So I think this is about scheduling the actual transform. So can the mapping be scheduled in TM Designer so that the XML files can be read at a specified or over a specified period? I think this is about the kind of scheduling of the tasks.
What we do with ETM, as I said, once you define your mapping and you build it, what that build does, it creates behind the scenes basically a Java jar. When you're in the runtime tool, one of the options you have in the runtime tool is to create an export pack or a transform pack. And what that transform pack is a standalone item, and you can schedule that to run. So it doesn't schedule it within TM. So within your own scheduler, within your own system, then you call it or schedule it to run at a particular date. So you can call it from a command line. You can set it up in Windows Scheduler, however you wish to do it. And there are there are also other ways of executing our transforms, but as a standard for running it kind of in a batch mode, then that's how we would go about doing it in the batch mode. We also have a kind of long-lived mode, where if you're reading off, say, a queue of some sort, then you could read those XML messages off the queue continuously. Transformation manager is always up. And it may be those messages are different, so you may just check and see what kind of message it is, and you can send it to the various transformation projects that you want to run depending on message type. So if you're getting other message types in, then you may have other transformation projects, and you can just call it and run that particular project that you want to run, and for that we call it long-lived mode, in terms of it's always up, always running, and always loading information into your target store.
Okay. We had a couple of questions which asked the same thing, which is how do we go about perhaps collaborating in some way or helping, I guess, with the mapping effort. I guess I can answer that. Yeah, for those that have asked that question, I'll drop my contact details if you haven't already got them. We'd welcome the opportunity to perhaps schedule a session where we would communicate what we've done so far, what our plan is, and then hopefully get you involved in maybe pointing us in the right direction, or even looking at some specific example mappings that you might have had. It's not formal or anything. We haven't set up any specified working group. In fact, our hope is that in the not too distant future, PPDM and Energistics may set up a similar group as they have done for WITSML to PPDM, where we would collaborate within that more standards-based group. But until then, we hope to have something that's at least answering some of the issues, or at least providing some value before that such a group is set up. So that's that. I have had some questions on pricing and stuff for TM. I'll come back to you individually on those. Thank you very much for taking part in today's webinar. We hope you got a lot out of the session. Obviously, it is intended as an initial overview and intro to what we've done so far. If you'd like to follow up, if you've got further questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Thanks again. Thanks very much, Chris, for that great demonstration. And take care. Have a good Christmas and New Year break. And we look forward to hopefully talking with you in the not too distant future.